Welcome to Bloomberg Law. I'm Lee Pacquiao. With the memory of failed anti-piracy bills SOPA and PIPA fresh in the public's mind, there is yet another cybersecurity bill currently working its way through the House of Representatives. The Cyber Intelligence Sharing and Protection Act, or CISPA to add another acronym to the pile, has the backing of over 100 co-sponsors from both parties, and it's sure to generate further controversy over if and how the Internet should be regulated. Joining us today to walk through the bill, we have Trevor Tim from the Electronic Frontier Foundation. He's piping in to us from San Francisco. Trevor, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. The media is calling CISPA the second attempt at regulating the Internet, but supporters are saying this is more about protecting sensitive corporate data from theft. Is this a regurgitation of SOPA and PIPA, or are we seeing something entirely different here?
Well, I think in some respects it's the same, and in some respects it's different. I mean, the point of this bill is completely different. The point of the bill, according to the co-sponsors at least, is that they want companies and governments to be able to share information back and forth that could help prevent or defend against a crippling cyber attack. But unfortunately, the bill's provisions are written so vaguely and so broadly that what it ends up doing is kind of creating a cybersecurity exception to all existing privacy laws. So what we're really worried about is the privacy of normal Internet users. SOPA was different because it was a copyright bill outright. But again, this bill actually still has some intellectual property provisions that we're really worried about. But first and foremost, we're worried that companies will now be able to surveil communications, even the contents of your emails, as long as it's for a, quote, cybersecurity purpose. And that term's also vaguely defined to where a hair trigger can trigger them looking into your communications for what they consider a cybersecurity purpose, but other people may not. Then the real problem is that they can then share this information with the government without the government asking. And the question is, what's the government going to do with this information? Can they also look at your emails and other communications? What can they use this information for? Is it just for cybersecurity purposes, or can they use it for other purposes? And that's what we're really worried about, because the bill's written vaguely to the point where they may get this information and be able to do whatever they want with it.
Right. On a conference call yesterday, Representative Mike Rogers, one of the sponsors of this bill, said that it's really about allowing companies to tag and hand over data pertaining to threats and vulnerabilities in order to protect systems and networks. Again, vague terms, but they insist that this is not really about media piracy, some kid in a dorm room downloading a movie illegally, but it's really about protecting American companies from foreign attacks, whether corporate or by foreign government. If that's truly the goal, how should this bill be written? Is it simply a matter of having better definitions?
Oh, I think so. I mean, it was great to hear that Rep. Rogers was concerned about privacy and that he said this was only aimed at foreign actors, and that, with civil liberties would be looked at carefully, and hopefully he will amend the bill to express some of those concerns. But the problem is, as far as intellectual property and copyright goes, he was trying to deflate the comparison between SOPA. But there is a clause in this that talks about intellectual property.
Right.
And he says that this isn't he's not talking about MP3s or songs or movies, but he's talking about, trade secrets and corporate data and other sort of tangible goods like pharmaceuticals and stuff like that, and airplanes. The problem is,
so why not put that in the bill?
Definition doesn't.
Right.
What'd you say?
So why not put that in the bill?
Absolutely. That's our point. The term intellectual property can be defined so broadly that what the government can end up doing is they have this information for what they call a cybersecurity purpose, but then they can use it for other purposes as well. And the Department of Homeland Security, which is responsible for a lot of the domain name seizures that have been going on for the last couple of years involving copyright infringement, will be getting this information. So if they can use it for a cybersecurity threat, what else can they use it for? And we're really worried that they may end up using this as an excuse to further censor websites that may or may not be involved in copyright infringement, but that get their domain name seized and their website shut down before trial.
Well, what stands out to me in this situation is the lack of corporate opposition to CISPA. Google and Facebook last time around opposed SOPA and PIPA. We're simply not seeing that this time. What to make of that?
Well, I think it's because the bill's purposes are different. SOPA really would have affected these companies' business models to the point where their legal liability costs would have been so high they may not have been able to operate. That's why we saw such fervent opposition from nonprofits like Wikipedia and even Google. The problem is with this bill that there's not that incentive for these companies. So while normal internet users who use these sites may be really affected and their privacy may be violated, these companies' bottom lines aren't affected as much. So they're not going to come out and oppose the bill with such fervor like with SOPA. And obviously, these companies have a legitimate worry about cybersecurity threats. But the problem is that they, haven't seen the larger picture and don't understand how this bill will affect their users and how it might create a backlash. Now, next week, we're having a week of action where we're trying to mobilize internet users against this bill. Now, we may not have the same corporate backing that the SOPA blackout had, but we're really hoping that through social media that a lot of people will become educated about this bill's dangers and hopefully call their congressmen to put a stop to it.
Just taking a step back and looking at this picture, it feels like we're falling into a pattern. It looks like we're on track to have wave after wave after wave of attempts to regulate the way individuals use the internet. Instead of having a knockdown, drag-out fight every time, what are groups like EFF proposing in terms of a long-term solution to the problems held up by supporters of these bills?
Well, like we saw with SOPA, Congress sometimes just doesn't understand what's going on the internet, what their users like, what their users expect as far as freedoms and civil liberties go on the internet. And I think at least now we've started to see that they're paying attention. During the conference call yesterday, Rogers was trying to point out desperately that this is not SOPA, and he didn't want to see a backlash from the internet over this bill. But unfortunately, when the drafters of these bills still haven't gotten the message that they need, if they want to regulate the internet in any way, they have to bring the users into the equation. And we haven't seen that yet. They're looking out for government interests and their ability to stop crimes or, if you're going to look at it cynically, to further surveil people on the internet. But what we're worried about is people's civil liberties. And hopefully groups like us and a host of other civil liberties organizations that will be participating next week can really shine light on what's going on. And in the future, that before these bills are even written, Congress will approach groups that are fighting for civil liberties and who are, fighting for just the users of the internet and write the bills with these people in mind.
All right, Trevor, we're going to have to leave it there. I want to thank you for your time today, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. That's Trevor Timm from the Electronic Frontier Foundation. If you'd like to learn more about the issue we just discussed, be sure to check out our offerings on BloombergLaw.com. You can see more of our videos on YouTube, and you can follow our updates on Twitter. I'm Lee Packia. Thanks for watching.